today's episode, we're going to talk about making habits stick, dominating life through grit. So Alex is the author, or I guess you could say podcaster, behind the 66-day experiment. Alex has launched a 4K a month side hustle, paid off over 60K in debt in 18 months, and has been able to keep up a solid morning routine for a long time now. And he credits all this to his ability to making habits stick. So Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Travis, I am thrilled. I'm very, very thankful that you had me on the show, and we got to meet at Podcast Movements.
That was a blast. I think a lot of the listeners don't realize that a lot of these people I've been interviewing lately have been through the podcast movement. And just as a quick side note, if anybody out there has a chance to go to an event like Podcast Movement or any other convention, I highly recommend it because you meet great people like Alex.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
So let's start off with your story, because you have a pretty interesting story.
Where do you want me to start? From the very beginning?
Let's do it from the beginning.
Honestly, guys, I was an ugly duckling with a chip on his shoulder. I was the class clown, the likable jerk, maybe. I've been kind of mean all my life because I wasn't good at sports, and so I just tried to use humor to make friends the best I could. And that followed me all the way into college. Like you, Travis, I listened to my parents and pursued a career path where I would get paid lots of money and get job security and everything that, sounds great on paper, but it wasn't all that satisfying. I went to pharmacy school, and right before graduation, I read this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm holding it right now. It is by far one of the most powerful books in my life, next to Scripture and How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book made me realize how much of a jerk I've been for the last 24 years of my life, and that I needed to change in a major way. And once I started practicing as a clinical pharmacist, I realized that I'm not really getting out of life what I want. I really need to change who I am in order to be happy with who I am. And so I started, like you, on this journey of doing online business, and I created podcasts, I taught courses, I've done coaching, consulting, I've been all over the place, and I've failed at a lot of things, and a lot of things have been going really well. And now I'm still a full-time pharmacist. I work right now at a government hospital, and on the side, I've got this really awesome online business, and on the side of that, I also have a podcast called the 66-Day Experiment, which is an action guide for change. It's all about trying to make habits stick. Do you want me to kind of unpack what that's about?
Let's talk about that. That's what this episode's going to be all about. So let's talk about making habits stick.
Yeah. I have never been one really to be consistent. I've always, Travis and I were talking earlier off air about how we both love new things, and we both love to try new things, and we feel sometimes like the projects we're working on are not all that exciting. And I realize that, I've had this problem for a while, and that I've been reading more books about just successful people like Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., I read one about Steve Jobs. I'm reading Elon Musk's biography now, which is great. And the more I dive into these people, the more I found, habits are really kind of the core of what brought these people into who they are. It's interesting. I've read a lot of studies after starting this experiment, and it's reported anywhere from 40 to 80% of the things we do on a daily basis come down to our habits, from the way we take care of ourselves, from the way we talk to our friends and family, from the way we floss or don't floss our teeth. A lot of the decisions we make come down to our habits, and I wanted to hack that process. And so technically, actually, as we're recording this, I just finished up the first season of my experiment, where for the last 66 days, I've been reading a book a day, writing, exercising, which I've never really done in my life before. If you saw my arms, you'd be like, yeah, that's probably a true statement. And also doing a daily sex challenge with my wife. So those are huge.
That's a good one. I don't know if I want the details of what the challenge entails, but okay, that's good.
Yeah, honestly, we don't talk a whole lot about the sex thing because it's not really so much a habit as much a challenge to grow intimacy in our marriage.
Okay.
And that is a whole bucket of worms, but we'll stick to the habit stuff. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I mean, everyone out there listening, they have habits that they want to start doing. What's the first step? Like, how do you make a habit stick?
Well, don't do what I did and try to read a book a day.
Yeah, that sounds a little intense.
Yeah, it is. You need to have speed reading capabilities to do something like that. And I learned that lesson very quickly. It's very hard to read a book a day, even when you speed read and you have a job and you have a wife. And I have two girls too. I have two daughters. And when I read a book, I think on day 10 of the experiment called Mini Habits by Stephen Guise. And the premise of the book is pretty simple. And it's that if you want to start a habit, you've got a lot of things working against you. Depending on how old you are, if you're in your 20s like me and Travis, you've had 20 some odd years to build the habits that you have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say for you, Travis and I were just talking about flossing our teeth. I don't floss every day. Be 100% honest with you. I do not floss every day. But a simple way to start that is to say, look, don't floss all your teeth. Just get one tooth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start flossing one tooth, you're kind of like, oh, come on. Okay, that was a lot easier than I thought. And then you do the rest.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely not true for every habit or for trying to change bad habits. But the premise is pretty simple. The best way to start, honestly, is just by doing something really, really small.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, exercising has never really been a part of my routine. I'm just not, physical fitness is not all that important to me. I definitely want to keep my body around, you know. I still want to be physically fit when I'm older and be able to do things, but it's not been important to me. And that was honestly, the biggest hurdle for me to overcome was not being able to do my habits on a consistent basis. And once I read that book, I realized that I was pushing myself too much. I was trying to get to 100 push-ups a day and like 100 jumping jacks, which those jumping jacks were easy. Push-ups, oh man, that was tough.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get that far to 100, but I realized I was pushing myself. And what I did is I took that process of making a mini habit of doing just one pull-up a day. So Travis, like every other guy in their 20s, did you buy that pull-up bar that you put on a door frame?
No, I've never bought it. I've had
Okay.
roommates that have it, to be fair.
Yeah, okay. So you're one of the, smart guys who didn't fall into that TV scheme. I bought one, and now I do it. And the cool thing is as I look back on the last 66 days, there's been tons of days where I missed my push-ups, I missed my jumping jacks, and I think it's because it took a lot of time, and it was difficult to maintain those habits. But the pull-ups, I've been able to do those every day, no matter what. And that kind of goes into how I structured the process of hacking the habits. Do you want to dive into how
Let's
to do that?
dive into that. Yeah. It sounded like you were about to say triggers. Am I?
I did, but I didn't know if I wanted to open up that
Oh, I
bag.
love that because I think to me the formula is really it's broken down into science, and I've done a little bit of reading on like B.F. Skinner's kind of stuff, his work,
Okay.
and obviously B.J. Fogg we talked about before,
Hmm.
but I don't remember the full process. So I know you need to have a trigger, you need to have a reward, and I feel like there's another element to it too that I'm missing right now.
The middle, the routine, so the
Just
actual
okay.
habit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're thinking like in a circle, at the beginning you've got a trigger, and that triggers the routine to happen, which in turn gets the reward
Hmm.
of that. And then it goes around the circle, continuing the process. Our brains are very complex and hardwired to like rewards. For example, I don't know about you, Travis. I've noticed this as I've been teaching my daughter to brush her teeth, that my mouth salivates like when I'm brushing her teeth.
Hmm.
So I'm like, in my brain, it doesn't make sense to brush your physiologically, it doesn't make sense to brush your teeth with a dry mouth. It doesn't work well.
Hmm.
And so my brain triggers this response of it's time to brush your teeth. And one of the side effects is I'm getting kind of gross here. But the point is
Talking some Pavlov dogs thing going on right here.
right, right. The point about habits is, let's say the cue in your morning routine, you probably brush your teeth
Hmm.
if you're an American citizen, and maybe your trigger is hopping out of the shower, and that's the next thing you do, or maybe it's after you put on your clothes, that's the next thing you do. So the cue is in that process, let's say putting on your clothes. So the cue is doing that, and that triggers you to grab your toothbrush and to do the actual habit, the routine of brushing your teeth. And the reward of doing that habit is maybe that clean teeth feeling that you got to have. I know that if I miss a day of brushing my teeth, I know my teeth feel super grody, and I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah.
like, I bet you can spot the moss on my teeth a mile away, man. I got to do this. Well, what happens in this process of habit development? It's crazy what the brain does. After you start doing a routine over and over and over again, the brain tricks itself in that it creates what's basically a dopamine release in your brain that says, yes, when you get that reward, right? That's why we love like pretty much anything that brings us pleasure is resolved from or comes from dopamine. So
Hmm.
you watch your favorite TV show, dopamine explosion. Sex, lots of dopamine there.
Cocaine. Oh.
Cocaine, you betcha. That's why it's a habit forming drug. And so what the brain does is, as you build these habits, it releases a huge dopamine wave when the trigger happens.
Hmm.
So when you're putting on your clothes, you get the reward feeling immediately. And that triggers the automatic response of brushing your teeth. And so the best way to change your habits or to start a new one is to not change the trigger or the reward, but change the actual routine. And that takes a lot of experimenting and trying to figure out how to do. And that would be like a 2 hour long conversation.
So
But
give us a quick example what you're talking about.
for I can give you an example that I did for my experiment.
Yeah.
A cue for me in the morning is drinking water and getting my coffee.
Hmm.
Right now I'm actually kind of parched, so excuse me if I if I grab some water. But what I do every morning is I grab a cup of water and I make some coffee. And what I would do during that time is I would check like woot.com for a daily deal, or I would just have some mundane thing like checking Facebook at 5 a.m. And I realized during my experiment that this would be a great time to do a mini habit.
Mm.
And during that time, so if you think about this through that habit loop that we talked about, the trigger is technically walking in the kitchen. The routine is making the coffee, getting my water, and the reward for me anyway is the feeling that the water gives me after drinking it all in the morning. Kind of really wakes me up,
Hmm.
and I love coffee. I love the taste of it. So, it's tons of dopamine for me. So what I did to kind of change the routine is I kept the trigger and the reward the same, but I changed the routine in that I added doing pull-ups. during that time. And it's worked extremely well for me because I was just thinking about this this morning because I just ended my 66-day experiment. I've been thinking about, like what went well, what didn't go well. And the best thing about it has been that I don't even think about doing my pull-ups anymore. Because in the beginning, I was kind of like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to do this. I just want to
Hmm.
kind of give up. But now it's just, okay, I'm going to do one pull-up. Most days I try to do, 10 more if I can. But some days I just do one, excuse me. And that's gone really well. Is that a good example?
That's a great example. I mean, I have a
Okay.
very similar thing. I
What did you
recently,
do?
my morning routine, I've recently been working on it or for the past few months, and I designed what I thought would be my perfect morning routine. And I realized that I want to do a little bit of exercise every morning. And when I first
Mhm.
started, it was just like you said, it was kind of like, do I really want to do this? No, whatever. But like I would just do it anyways. And I figured, okay, maybe even if I stop a little bit short, I'll go outside, do a few jumping jacks, whatever.
Mhm.
And then now it's like I wake up and I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to do it. What else would I do? Like, come on, it's common sense. So it's worked really well for me.
Yeah, that's the science behind fog stuff and the
Hmm.
mini habit idea. It's so simple, so small that you would feel kind of like stupid to not do it. You'd be like, oh, come on, you can do one push up, you can do one jumping jack, one sit up, one pull up,
Hmm.
um, one page of a book a day. Any of the things that we want out of life, all of these things are okay. I'm sorry, I was about to get on a pedestal and talk about the compound effect, but I'm gonna.
Okay. I mean, it's up to you. I'm all about it.
uh, I get really excited about this stuff.
Cool.
I think I think in our 20s we get this major FOMO, fear of missing out, when we see other people's success. And I
Hmm.
think we define ourselves by other people's success and standards, right? I'll be honest with you. I just saw some guy on Yahoo. He's 30 or 31, and he's a millionaire. He's traveling the world with his hot girlfriend in a Learjet. And I had that feeling of FOMO, thinking he's only a couple years older than me, and I'm nowhere near that. And it made me feel like envious, jealousy. Um, I was like, oh, you know, I'm not there yet. That
Hmm.
sort of idea. But the problem is about any change that you want to make in your life, whether it's getting a new relationship, your physical appearance, making more money, more spirituality, whatever it is that you desire, it it's never going to happen to you overnight.
Hmm.
It takes days, weeks, months, years for people to become who they are and what they do. There's the old adage that Thomas Edison, you know, failed 1,000 times before he created a light bulb. I don't know if that's true or not. I know, my friend Kamanzi Constable. You know Kamanzi.
He's coming on the show
He,
tomorrow.
yeah, awesome. He's my coach. He's an awesome dude. He's sold like over 100,000 copies of his book, but just a few years ago, he was just driving a truck for a bread company, or I
Hmm.
think it was his company. I don't know.
Yeah, it was his bread company, but it ended up going under.
Right,
He said.
right. So all all of this success we see other people have that we think we want, um, is no way going to happen overnight. And
Yeah.
for all of these people, I mean, even for you, Travis, with your business and the success that you've had with it, it didn't happen just, oh, hey, I figured out the formula. It took days, months, years.
Hmm.
I mean, when did you start your e-commerce store?
2.5 years ago. I mean, the first 4 months, zero sales, and I completely agree with you, and that's a problem I've struggled with a lot, and I think I'm still in some ways struggling with is I. For instance, I want to get in better shape. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go work really hard out in the gym, and I burn myself out, and then I'm like, oh, I need to take the rest of the week off because I'm super sore now. And instead of being like, all right, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna get a good workout in, maybe take a day off, get a better workout in next time, take a day off, get an even better workout next time. Instead of building up that success, I think especially us people in their 20s want it right now. And even some of us are willing to work really hard for it right now, and maybe the next day, and maybe even one more day after that. And then we're like, oh, wait a minute, that was harder than I thought. I don't want to do it anymore. Which actually I think is a really good segue into grit. And you were talking about this before the episode a little bit. So can you describe what grit is?
Grit is essentially a passion and perseverance for long-term goals. This is relatively newer research. It's been developed over the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. And the way they found it is researchers were trying to figure out what is the quality behind people who truly excel in their fields, athletes, musicians, businessmen. What do these people have in common, and why are they so successful? And they ruled out all these qualities that we think people need to have. Families with lots of money, all the right opportunities, networking. While all these things are good and can prepare you for success, what they found most commonly was this idea of grit, a passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And what's interesting now, they've quantified this. I'll shoot you a link here and we can share it with everybody. You can actually figure out what your grit score is. I think it's like a scale of 1 to 5 or 0 to 5. And 5 is like the grittiest score that you can get. And what essentially a person who is gritty is someone who's going to accomplish their goals. They're going to make great habits and maybe not have perfect habits, but they're going to not give up when they fall off the bandwagon. Mm-hmm. When people listen to my show and they shoot me emails, the biggest problem I hear people have is, I fell off. What do I do? I failed. I feel like I can't move forward. And I had a mentor. Every time I hear this, I hear my mentor in college say to me, "Do the next right thing." And like that's grit summed up for me. Mm. Do the next right thing. I made a lot of mistakes in college. I did a lot of stupid stuff. And I remember coming to him and telling him all my stuff, and he said, "Look, you can let those past failures define you and who you are, or you could do the next right thing." And that made such a huge impact on me even before I knew about grit. One thing that I've been geeking out about this research that I've been reading. In fact, I just had it and now I lost it. But I know where it is. So maybe you're thinking, okay, maybe you pause this episode and then you took the test on grit and then you're like, oh man, I'm a 2 or I'm a 1. I'm not that gritty. Like, man, I'm not going to get what I want out of life. I'm not going to achieve my dreams or, whatever you're thinking. Hold up, wait a minute. Put a little love in it. Let's check this out. They've done research on students and athletes that shows that when people take this exercise, they are more likely to become more grittier and actually achieve more of their goals. It's a relatively simple exercise, but honestly, it takes time to do, and not everyone is willing to do it. So do you want me to go through this exercise right now?
Let's go for it.
Well, how about we do something right now with you and me? I'll ask you some questions and you go through it. Sound good?
All right, sounds good.
Cool. Think about your most important wish or goal that's related to this podcast. Does that sound good?
Okay. Right now I'm completely, other than like for this week, I'm pretty focused on my business, but I can do that. I think my bigger goal currently, and I told you before the show, is 75K in October, which I don't know if that's too short of a term. Okay, but I also have one for the podcast. I can talk a little bit about that too. So it's whatever way you want me to take it.
Let's do this podcast since people are listening to this podcast. What's your most important wish or goal for this podcast?
I would eventually, and I haven't really talked about this a lot, so I'll share the knowledge now. My goal is it's a very long term, or not very, but for someone in their 20s, it's a long term goal. 3 years from now, I'd like to write a book, and I'd like to not have it be like some fluffy for fun book. It'd be like a real how-to guide. Like, you want to travel? Here's how you do it. You want to freelance? This is how you do it. And so my goal is to have a big enough audience by that point that the book will be a New York Times bestseller.
So maybe I should have made a caveat
Hmm.
because the next part of it, this goal should be something that's challenging, but something you should achieve in the next few weeks to months.
Okay, let's go back to the e-commerce thing then.
I wasn't thinking when I asked you this.
So
Um,
75K for the month of October.
let's do this. So the best, as you already know this, the best way to one of the easiest hacks to achieve your goals is to write them down.
Hmm.
So write down one of the best outcomes of, yeah, look at that. Boom, baby, right there. If you're watching in video, he just showed his goal, and it's very inspiring for me. So after that, write down the one best outcome of fulfilling your wish or reaching your goal.
More time freedom for me. Being
More
able to
time.
do more of what I want, live where I want, and all that kind of stuff. More
Okay.
freedom.
Write down as many obstacles that could prevent you from achieving your wish or goal. And I
Oh,
know we got a time limit here, but go
I
ahead.
mean, there's so many. I guess the biggest one is unforeseen costs and labor. That's like the thing that really hits me hard. Uh, Different marketing strategies I have not working out as well as they would. Any kind of economic downturn, which obviously is really big and completely out of my control. Any other reason that people would just decide, hey, I don't want to buy from you guys anymore.
Hmm.
I could keep on going, but I'll stop there.
Any personal obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, there was like a week or two ago where I was just staring at the screen, and it's like I couldn't get myself to do anything, and that does scare me. I don't think that that's a consistent problem, but maybe I just can't summon up that courage to push through the day. Or another obstacle could be, and we talked about this before the show, I have that shiny object syndrome where I'm like, oh, I have this other really good idea. And I've been avoiding that for the last few months, last year or so. But I'm scared that that could potentially come up again.
I think that's a very common problem with people. It happens to me all the time. So let's hone in on that one. Then my next question is where does your next obstacle occur next? In what place, in what day, or what time?
Next obstacle, as in,
The shiny object syndrome.
oh, okay,
When does that occur next? And like when does it happen? Where does
every
it
day, all
happen?
day. Like every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to bed, randomly throughout the day. It's right now I'm at this point where I am pushing through a tougher time because it's not right now as fun as it was, a few months ago. Which and I know that, and I know that it's something I need to overcome. So I'm not trying to sit here complaining, but I'd say the biggest ones are when I wake up, I do a journaling, and when I go to bed, I do like a recap, like short journaling, and I think about it every day, and I'm like, man, this is tough. I don't want to do this anymore. But obviously, I'm gonna keep doing it. Hopefully,
Okay.
because I have grit. We'll see.
I think you touched on a little bit on this next part, but what can you do to overcome your obstacles or obstacle? What action or behavior could you do that would help overcome the obstacle?
One thing I've done, and this is kind of a bigger tactic, is I've burned my ships in the sense that I've invested. Summer was pretty lean for us, and we knew it would be. So the business needed to take a loan, but I took from my own personal funds. So
Hmm.
my success is very tied into October being a good month and so forth. So I really don't have a chance to back out, and I've done that on purpose. And I've also committed to staying here for the next few months. And for those listening, I am at home with my parents currently because that is where the business is located. And to be honest, I've been traveling for the last few years, and it's really easy to get distracted when you're in Buenos Aires and there's beautiful women and great wine and steak. I do nothing here except for work right now.
Wow. Well, kudos to you for being so disciplined. Uh, just to insert my own tactic, uh, about 2 weeks ago, I had shiny object syndrome for about 4 hours,
Mm.
and I had created a whole new podcast idea. I created the business structure behind it. I bought the domain name. I figured out everything that I wanted to do for it, and I let myself have that because it was like a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And my tactic for I when I have shiny object syndrome is I will either the main tactic I have is that I write the idea down
Mm-hmm.
and then I put it on my idea wall and I just let it sit there. And then probably about once a month, I like to take one thing from the idea wall and I just like to dive into it and think about it and process it and think, would this be an actual good idea, and get feedback from people. And then I just let it sit there and go back on the ideal wall because I mean I get distracted so easily. It's bad.
Yeah. I will say, actually, that is something I'm going to start implementing. So, for instance, for the listeners, this week I've been doing nothing but how to do your 20s podcast related stuff because I could feel myself burning out. And I knew I planned this ahead of time, like months ago. I knew after Podcast Movement, there'd be a lot of interesting people I'd want to interview. And I knew that by that point I'd be burned out of the business. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to spend a week of nothing but how to do your 20 stuff. And every once in a while, I'll sneak in and do some B Danceware stuff. And another tactic or another thing I'm looking to start doing is kind of like you were saying, one day a week where I do more of a recharge. And on top of that, if I want to have a creative outlet, for instance, I want to do this new YouTube channel, whatever, I have one day to get as much stuff done as I want. So I think I'm going to start doing that.
Smart. I like that idea. That's it. And now that you're all done with this, and hopefully the listener at home, they maybe wrote down those questions, or I can send you those questions
Okay.
in like for a blog post or something, and you can write down your answers. By doing this, you're preparing yourself to overcome your obstacles to your habits, your change, your goals, whatever that you'd like. It's basically an if-then template.
Mm.
So if obstacle X, shiny object syndrome happens, then what? What will you do when that comes? Because the thought shouldn't be, I'm not going to have things that are going to stop me from this.
Mm-hmm.
You should expect the world, the universe, this force, the resistance, whatever you want to call it, to stop you from getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's distractions. That's a huge thing for me. Distractions happen all the time, and they stop me from making more money, spending time, valuable time with my family, doing a good job at my day job and in my business. And so I have to understand what my obstacles are and what's my game plan for getting around those.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't, well, I'm not gritty, because then the obstacles are going to stop me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to get me towards that goal of what I desire. This is all about incremental change. I recently did a calculation this morning, actually, for this podcast, truthfully, and I thought, if you took the number 0.001 and you doubled it 10 times, you would just get over 1. It'd be 1.024. Now, I know there's going to be some math geek out there that's going to double check my math. I could be wrong, but the point is, if you took that number and you doubled it 10 times, and you took that and you spread it on a graph, that's not impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty lame.
Mm-hmm.
But if you doubled 1 10 times, I'll be honest, I didn't do the math before this podcast on that.
It's 1,024. Oh no. Well, no.
don't-
Two to the 10th power is 1,024. That's why a kilobyte is. But
See,
okay.
I'm a pharmacist and I'm not good at math.
Anyways, so I guess Anyways, go ahead.
The point is if you slowly change over time, you're not gonna see a huge change in weeks. You're not gonna see a huge change in months, but many months, years, you're gonna see a huge change. I started my online business over 3 years ago, and I failed at so many things, and I barely made positive. And it hasn't been until like 10 months ago that I started making over $1,000. And it's like, holy cow, how did this happen? It didn't happen overnight.
Hmm.
It took a lot of persistence, a lot of grit, a lot of biting my teeth and putting in the time and getting laughed at, ridiculed, people saying I was crazy for doing this stuff. And now here I am getting rid of debt as quickly as I can so that I can live like that, like what you were saying, that freedom, that lifestyle that I want.
Awesome. So I want to go over one other quick thing, and
Yeah.
that's the dailies, because I thought that was really interesting about your blog, and I think we kind of already covered that, but can you give a little bit of background on what the dailies are?
Yes. I don't have an example to show, which I feel embarrassed about. It's in my Elon Musk book, actually. That's outside this room. Uh, I learned from, I think it was Todd Henry, who's also another podcaster of The Accidental Creative, a great show. And he pointed me to this resource where he found these French monks would do something that's called the Dailies. And these monks were their main goal in life was to become, more spiritual, to know God more. And so they would do things like prayer, meditation, reading, fasting, all things to put make their body their slave, essentially. And I found this idea fascinating. And what I have on my site, if you go to 66dayexperiment.com, you can actually download this tool as a digital copy or print it off, which is my preferred version. And what it is it's essentially a chart of 31 days in a month. And on the left-hand side is a list of life and business habits that I want for my life. And like I said earlier, my habits are writing, exercising, um, reading, and I have a few other personal ones on there. And the typical reaction I get from a lot of people is like, dude, that's just a checklist. I'm not a kid. I don't need that. What's actually interesting is that pilots,
Hmm.
the people who fly us from place to place and don't kill us,
Hmm.
they have to use checklists because if they don't, they're more likely to kill people,
Hmm.
period. The same thing is true for surgeons, medical doctors. Some of the smartest people in our nation use checklists for every single surgery because, once again, it's been proven in scientific journals that checklists save lives. So for
Wow.
me, I use that to my advantage. And it doesn't. I'm getting really excited about this. So if you have questions or if I'm talking too much, please
No.
let me know. This this idea of tracking your habits is so important because as you end your day or maybe you're reviewing the day before, you mark off the habits that you did the day before. Well, if you missed a habit, you need to ask yourself a question. Well, what happened? What stopped you from getting it? Maybe you're not using the right trigger for your habit. Maybe you're not using the right reward for the habit. Um, Maybe the routine needs to be placed somewhere else. Um, Maybe like if you have a habit of eating, I don't know, a cookie or a donut every morning, um, maybe it's not really the fact that you're craving a donut. Maybe it's that you're hungry and that you should fill it with something else.
Yeah.
And rather than buying the donut, spending the time on that, you could just put a banana in your hand before you have that craving, and then you just stick it down your gullet, and you're good to go.
Hmm.
Life is all about experimenting. That's like my main mantra, man. There's no such thing as a failed experiment. There's only feedback. So you have to treat your life like a big science project and think, okay, I tried to run a mile a day, and I did that for about 3 days, and then I gave up. Well, why? Why did you give up?
Hmm.
Critically think about these things and about the obstacles that stop you so that you can refine your day, refine the way you live your life so that you can get more out of it. And all it really takes is just sitting down, thinking about it, and trying new things. Don't think yourself a failure. Just think, how can I take this one day and what I learned and try something new.
I love it. I mean, I want to ask you, I ask everyone at the end of the show this question, and it's what general advice would you give to people in their 20s? And I feel like this whole episode has been geared towards that. And that last monologue you had right there was perfect. I think you hit the nail on the head. But is there anything else, just since I always ask this question, anything else you would tell everyone in their 20s? And I know we're both in our 20s, but I'm sure there's
Yeah.
some advice you might have.
No, man, if I could go back, I would say stay away from the girl in the blue hair.
Okay.
Um, long story.
Okay.
But what I would really say to myself is, um, how would I convince myself to do this? I'd probably say something like, you are going to offend and hurt a lot of people if you don't wake up.
Mm.
That would wake me up out of my stupor. Like I said before, I was unfriendly, I was mean. I had a very charming way of making fun of things and people, but I was a jerk, and that really hurt a lot of people that I've reconciled since then. But I really wish that I treated everyone with love and respect.
Okay, that's a great answer. Alex, where can people find out more about you?
Check out 66dayexperiment.com. That'll get you access to the habit tracker tool that I talked about. Or you can check me out on Twitter at It's Alex Barker.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.